Hello, and welcome to Present Parenting, where our mission is to give children the mindful care they need. My name is Amy, and I'd like to introduce the basic concepts of present parenting to you today. The purpose of this video is to give just a brief overview. And if you find yourself wanting a deeper understanding, please follow along on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, where I'll upload all of my content for free and where I'll inform you about how to sign up for free live Q&As with me on how to apply present parenting concepts in your family. So let's get started. What is present parenting? At present parenting, you'll hear me focus on three main concepts: brain development, the accountability pyramid, and personal mindfulness. Now, if you're brand new to present parenting, don't get intimidated by our frequent use of scientific terms. When I first started studying brain science, I was totally confused too. But I've found that increasing my vocabulary on what's really happening inside the minds of my children has really increased my confidence in making more mindful parenting choices. So I want to continue to normalize both understanding brain science and talking comfortably about it. I also highly encourage you to study brain development on your own because resources in today's world are abundant. The second topic you'll hear a lot about is the accountability pyramid. This pyramid is at the center of present parenting and is what makes present parenting unique. I'll explain it more in a minute, but it might be helpful to know right from the start that it often takes folks some time to truly understand the pyramid's depth and how to apply it in everyday parenting situations. But once parents understand it, it becomes a tool that they are so grateful for. So be patient in learning this new concept. The third topic you'll hear me talk a lot about is personal mindfulness. In order to accomplish the level of parental mindfulness that our children need from us, we have to keep working on ourselves. So at Present Parenting, we talk a lot about self improvement. So buckle up and let's talk a little bit more about each of these three concepts. So, when it comes to understanding basic brain development, there is so much we could talk about. And the human brain is so incredibly complex that couldn't possibly understand it all or cover it all. But I do want to share three simple brain facts that really kind of changed my parenting many years ago and are foundational to present parenting. So the first one is that the brain develops back to front and from the inside out. In other words, our primitive instincts develop first. The back of the brain is what is in charge of our primitive survival instincts. And when babies are born, the front of their brain isn't connected yet. And so that changes the way I think about parenting my child when I consider the fact that I can't expect them to act like a full grown adult because they don't have an adult brain yet. The second one on here is coincides just with the first, in that the prefrontal cortex, which is right up front, develops gradually and over 2 decades. You'll hear me talk a lot about the prefrontal cortex, and that's because that's the part of the brain that is in charge of mindfulness. And it's the part of the brain that we hope our children are developing in order for them to be mature adults someday. And when we go to discipline them or interact with them, a lot of times our discipline doesn't line up with actually helping them develop a strong prefrontal cortex. And so you'll hear me talk a lot about the prefrontal cortex taking a long time to develop and how we as parents should be very okay with that natural development and what we should do along the way in all the different stages of that prefrontal cortex development. The third one is mirror neurons. That's something that scientists discovered just in the 1990s, where they realized that our brain is full of these neurons that specialize in essentially seeing. They don't actually see, but they mimic what our eyes see. And so when we're watching something, even if we're not moving, those mirror neurons are starting to teach our body how to work and how to move, even if our body can't isn't capable of those movements yet. That's how children learn to walk. That's how they learn to do so many things, as they are cued in watching us, and that cues some of their motor mirror neurons to learn some of the same skills that we older people have. So mirror neurons give us a big um, motivation to give our children the best environment that we possibly can because those mirror neurons are going to act and think differently for the child depending on what environment we offer them. Um, let's go a little bit more into that on the next slide. So take a look at these two lists. The primitive brain, which is the back and inside of the brain, is often referred to as the reactive brain or animalistic brain because its job is to assist us in survival. From birth, children are hardwired for self preservation. Long before the mindful brain develops, the primitive brain gets to work learning coping skills in order to manage environmental stress. You've probably heard the terms fight, flight, and freeze. These are primitive brain functions that develop during childhood and dominate during the first many years of a child's life, which is why we see so many extreme expressions of emotion in our children. The mindful brain, or frontal lobe, sits right behind our forehead and it develops last. The list on the right describes what the mindful brain's job is and basically describes how a mature adult behaves. Wouldn't our job be easier if our children were born with a fully working mindful brain? But they are not. Instead, we get to play a major role in influencing their progress towards the development of that mindful brain. Now, as a parent of 8 children, I totally get how unnerving and challenging it is to live with children who display lots of primitive brain behaviors. And because of how unnerving and challenging it is, I used to desperately try to discipline them out of those behaviors. Cried out, timeouts, lost privileges. I tried most of the common parenting tactics, thinking I was giving their brains a good lesson in accountability. But when I studied brain science, I realized how wrong I was. It turns out that my rewards and punishment systems were only feeding their primitive brains because that's all they had. And instead of helping their mindful brains make connections, my rewards and punishments were usually shutting their prefrontal cortex down and making their poor primitive brains work overtime to survive the added stress of my attempts at discipline. And this made their primitive brains all the more dominant and difficult to live with and to override once their mindful brains were supposed to start playing a key role around age 8. So, if you want to help your child develop their mindful brain and rewards and punishments don't help, what does? That's where the accountability pyramid comes in. Over 15 years ago, when I finally understood the profound importance of focusing my parenting efforts on helping my children develop a strong frontal lobe, I then wrestled with how to do that. What are best practices for developing a child's prefrontal cortex to eventually think and behave mindfully? Thankfully, this pyramid flashed into my mind after years of studying and still feeling confused about which parenting methods were best. The pyramid became a logical answer to my heartfelt concerns because it showed me how to change my disciplinary tactics based on my child's changing brain. And we've been using it ever since. Let me briefly explain it to you. The accountability pyramid divides child development into stages in similar fashion to concepts of famous psychologists like Jean Piaget and Eric Erikson. However, the words used to describe the various stages attachment, following, accountability, self discipline, independence, and leadership coincide with the primary goal that a prefrontal cortex needs to accomplish in order to progress towards becoming a mindful brain. In other words, during the first 3 years of life, the prefrontal cortex needs a strong focus on attachment. Starting from age 1 until age 7 or 8, the prefrontal cortex needs a strong focus on learning to follow positive leaders, like mindful parents. Notice that it's not until about age 7 that a prefrontal cortex needs a strong focus on learning what accountability means. I've learned that children crave learning accountability all on their own if we time our focus on teaching it correctly and wait until their brains are ripe for it. There really is no need for unnatural rewards and punishments if we understand how to nurture a child's growing prefrontal cortex from birth all the way up through adulthood. The accountability pyramid acts as a roadmap for mindful disciplinary practices that change as a child grows. I could spend hours and hours and hours explaining this pyramid, and I will in future videos and classes. For now, get familiar with these stages and stay tuned in to looking for more detailed videos. This is a slide that sums up why I call the pyramid the accountability pyramid. Take a screenshot of it and start studying it and write down your questions and maybe leave a comment so I know what direction to take future training videos. But briefly, on the left side is a list of several aspects of what an accountable person might do. The chart then explains whether the parent or child is responsible for that piece of accountability throughout the various stages of the child's growth. You'll notice that the parent is 100% accountable during the first 8 years. Then full accountability gradually shifts to the child because the child's developing prefrontal cortex is ready and wants to take accountability naturally. It's a beautiful process to witness a child emerge from total dependence into an independent and capable adult. This brings us to the final topic that you'll hear a lot about at Present Parenting: personal mindfulness. Hopefully, at this point, your eyes have been opened to the reality that children don't have a fully developed frontal lobe, and therefore they need to be in the regular presence of someone who does. So, our mindful brains need to be in good shape. In order to advance up the accountability pyramid, you'll essentially be offering your child the presence of your secure attachment. You'll be modeling for them how a mindful prefrontal cortex acts, and you'll eventually be mentoring them in making their own wise choices. I'm not going to lie, it's hard. The endurance required feels like running a marathon. I can't tell you how often my mindful brain has had enough. So then my primitive brain takes over and gets reactive, which isn't always pretty. So I've got to keep working to strengthen my mindful brain every day. So at Present Parenting, we will focus a lot on meditation practices and self care for the sake of getting stronger and more capable of withstanding parenting stress day in and day out. Just like flight attendants advise us every time we fly, put your own oxygen mask on first so you can then save someone else. Same goes with prefrontal cortex development. We need to be actively developing our own prefrontal cortex so we can help our child develop theirs. And as hard as it is also so rewarding. But along the way, you'll hear me ask often, what are you doing today and every day to improve yourself? I will also highly recommend that you discover and rely on sources of spiritual strength outside of yourself. Regardless of religious preferences, faith in a higher source of power beyond our own strength is a critical aspect of developing a mindful brain that has the ability to compassionately and empathetically assist others. We will explore all of this much more in future videos. In the meantime, go download a meditation app and start using it. I sincerely thank you for your precious time and attention today. I hope you feel inspired to continue on this present parenting journey with me. Together, we can change the world, one child and one present moment at a time.